Be sure to subscribe, like, share, comment.
If you're being required to do things that make you weak and ashamed, then stop. Don't do them. Ask yourself on a day-to-day basis, what makes you think you're not selling your soul?
The Labor Department reported this week a stunning number of Americans quit their jobs in the month of August. The same report showed nearly 10.5 million jobs remained open through that month. So why are workers leaving their jobs in droves and not taking the millions of new ones available to them?
And America just set a new record for how many people are calling it quits.
It's being called the Great Resignation. A record number of Americans are telling their bosses, I quit.
According to a new Labor Department report, 4.3 million people quit in August. That's the highest number of people quitting on record dating back to more than 20 years. And that's up from 4 million who walked away from jobs in
Striketober.
Our future's not for sale.
Demands across the board are similar. Better wages, better and safer working conditions.
I just thought it was kind of funny because I'm kind of in an anti-work kind of mood. And that's because I've been scrolling the AntiWork subreddit lately. On the AntiWork subreddit, you can find all kinds of different memes and tweets, and right now the latest trend is text messages of people quitting their jobs. And I'll just start this video off by reading a poem that I found on the AntiWork subreddit. My boss made $1, I made a dime. That was a poem from a simpler time. Now my boss makes 1,000 and gives us a cent, while he's got employees who can't pay the rent. So when boss makes $1 million and workers make jack, that's when we strike and take our lives back.
But it turns out there isn't one reason people are quitting their jobs. Because the pandemic has given people a million reasons to quit their jobs.
Americans are looking for better pay, better working conditions, and more flexible working arrangements. Some have elder care and child care responsibilities in this pandemic.
Some say they feel burned out after working through a year that had so many challenges.
3 to 4 million people are still saying, I am fearful for my health, for the health of my loved ones, and therefore unwilling to take jobs where the risk of contagion is higher.
Millions of Americans worked from home over the last year and will likely quit rather than go back to the office.
I think this reason is one of the most interesting because it comes from a deeper, almost philosophical place.
For a lot of people, the pandemic has changed their minds about life, really, and what's important. And for some people, that means changing careers.
A growing number of them are not jumping to a new full-time job, but just taking a break. They are saying, I don't want another full-time job right now. I want to hit pause, maybe learn some new skills, take a breather, and maybe plot a new direction in my career.
It was a lot of reflection time. I know what I want out of my career. Might as well just make the move.
Let me read you this quote that frankly blew my mind. The paradox is, on one hand, members of this generation don't want to be ruled by the company. They want to have a life. Okay, sounds reasonable so far. Let's continue. On the other hand, they're impatiently waiting for job promotions and want all the perks associated with paying one's dues. Now, I don't know how I feel about paying one's dues, but I think this quote largely sums up the Great Resignation in a nutshell, right?
With extended COVID unemployment benefits run out, workers are defying the experts who predicted a return to the workforce, with many choosing to walk away, even without a safety net.
Except this quote wasn't from this year. It was from 1997 in an Atlanta newspaper. And the generation being talked about was Gen X, who were basically in their 20s at the time.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
In 1996, the Los Angeles Times reported that the 3 most common used words when older generations were using to describe younger generations were lazy, confused, and apathetic. So I guess it should be really no surprise that most of the narrative going around about the Great Resignation right now is just flat wrong. This is what I think most people think about when they hear that more data would be needed to get a full comprehensive story. Now, Goldman Sachs did a longer study and tracked individuals who were on unemployment, and they found clear evidence that ending those enhanced benefits led some people to go back to work. Which makes sense, right? The more you're getting paid to stay at home, the more likely you're going to be to stay at home.
Bottom line, employees want to be heard.
Look, at the end of the day, anytime humans experience a massive life change, it changes what they expect from their work. And these changes could be anything. Having a kid, getting divorced, losing a loved one. And the pandemic has done that to everyone.
Well, first of all, that's an adventure, that's for sure. That's a bloody adventure. And you have to do it carefully. And you have to be prepared for it. But it might be the best thing that ever happened to you. And the other thing is, if you're careful about it, you get your words right. Like, and this is strategic battle, right? It's not something you wander into carelessly. Then you may find that there's lots of people who feel exactly the same way you do, and that you've actually cottoned on to something. You're a canary in a coal mine, and not just some like psychopathic mouthpiece. So you got to ask yourself when you go and do what you do, like, is this making you stronger, or is this making you weaker? And if it's making you weaker, then you got to ask yourself, do you really want to be weaker? Because the weaker you get, the more you're tyrannized. And then worse than that, like, the weaker you get, the more bitter you get. And the more you'll work towards terrible things, the more you'll snap at your wife, the more you'll kick your kids, you know. Like, it's no joke to be tyrannized at work. And so I would say you have an ethical responsibility as a citizen to forthrightly confront creeping tyranny no matter where it occurs. And part of what we're learning, I would say, from these stories, if we're learning anything at all, is that if you're aimed at the good, which is a question you really got to ask yourself, you know. If you're genuinely aimed at the good, then take heart, because you're a lot stronger than you think. If you get your words right, you have something to say, there'll be an impact of those words. It might not be the impact that you would choose. But the other thing you got to tell people is, pick your poison. You may be in a situation where you don't have a cakewalk to the Garden of Paradise. You got tyranny or famine. Those are your choices. But you get to pick which one you have. And I would say if you're being oppressed, and I mean in your soul, by what you're required to swallow at work, well, you think you're not paying a price for that? You got no self-respect, and rightly so. But worse than that, you're an agent of your own destruction. You're destroying your own ideal, and you're letting people who are weak and corrupt win. And if you stood up and stood up properly, but you have to put yourself in order to do this, at least to some degree, right? You can't do it casually.
It's just not right. I think I talked about this in one of my previous videos, and maybe it's just because I have been scrolling AntiWork so much, but it says, get a job doing what you love, and you'll have to work twice as hard for half as much money, because your boss will exploit your passion for profit and drive you little by little to hate what you once loved. Man, that is just, it's too real.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon.